She laughed, mocked the size of the human's fragile ship. In a sky filled with hundreds of warships, it looked like a toy. But then, the first shot fired. And in one blinding flash, a destroyer, a cruiser, an entire line of ships, vanished, and the human ship didn't stop moving. It slipped through missiles, through lasers, like they were smoke. Every shot it fired was a kill. She thought her fleet was unstoppable, until she saw what one human ship could really do. And when the last target locked, she realized it was her. The alien fleet hung in the void above the red, swirling clouds of Velrath Prime, their massive warships glowing like steel mountains under a dying sun. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Virexis, Admiral Vera stood tall, her deep blue skin catching the orange light from the planet below. Around her, officers moved quickly, voices sharp, eyes fixed on the tactical displays. For days they had hunted rumors of a human vessel trespassing into Imperial space, rumors that sounded like a bad joke. Humans were new to the galactic stage, weak, fragile, untested. Their worlds were small, their fleets even smaller. Yet here it was, a single blip on the sensors. A human ship, tiny against the backdrop of 1,000 Imperial warships. Lips curved into a smirk as the image sharpened on the main screen. It was nothing barely bigger than a shuttle, its hull marked with strange black lines, shape awkward and unimpressive compared to the sleek killing machines of the Empire. "This is the threat?" she said aloud, her voice carrying across the bridge. The crew laughed with her, the sound a mix of arrogance and disbelief. She stepped forward, her long fingers brushing over the console as she opened the comms channel to the human ship. "Unknown human vessel," she said in a voice dripping. "With mockery, you have entered restricted Imperial territory. Surrender your ship, if it even qualifies as one. And perhaps I will allow you to live long enough to explain why." Her words echoed across the channel, sharp and deliberate. On the other end, silence. No reply. Vera's brow lifted. "Did they hear me?" she asked, glancing toward her comms officer. "They heard you, Admiral," the officer confirmed. "Then repeat the order," Vera said, her smirk deepening. "Louder." The officer sent the transmission again, this time with a signal boost. And then, finally, the human's reply came, not the stammering apology she expected, not the begging for mercy she had already decided to deny. For a heartbeat, even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Then the laughter started again, louder this time, rolling through the crew like a wave. Vera herself chuckled, shaking her head. "One shot," she repeated. "They're not even armed with." She stopped. On the main screen, the human ship's hull began to glow faintly, its strange markings now shining like veins of molten silver. The energy signature spiked, and a single narrow beam of light lanced out into the darkness. It was silent. No shockwave, no roar, just a thin, white line stretching across the void. The beam hit the nearest destroyer Huriths, claned for a moment, nothing happened. Then the destroyer exploded, its hull splitting apart like glass under a hammer. The fireball lit the void, and the beam kept going. It speared through the next ship in line, and the next after that, slicing through armor as if it were nothing but paper. On the bridge of the Virexis, the laughter died in an instant. Officers scrambled to check damage reports, their voices rising. In sudden panic, "3 ships down," someone shouted. "No, 4. The Sereth Dawn is breaking apart." Vera's smirk was gone. Her jaw tightened as she turned to the tactical display. "How far can that weapon reach?" she demanded. "Unknown," her weapons officer said, hands flying over controls. "It's still active." She could see it now, the human ship's beam fading only after tearing through 6 ships in one perfect line. The wreckage floated like broken teeth in the black. The enemy had not moved. It sat there, small and still, like a predator that didn't need to chase its prey. "Bring all forward batteries online," Vera snapped. "Full missiles spread. Lasers at maximum output. I want that thing erased." Orders rippled through the fleet. Storm of light erupted as the Imperial Armada unleashed its full power on the lone human vessel. Missiles streaked forward there, engines flaring bright. The firepower of 100 ships converged on the human's position, and yet none of it touched. The human ship shifted slightly, and then impossibly its outline seemed to blur. The missiles passed through empty space where it had been a second before. The lasers bent away, scattering harmlessly as if the air itself had been folded. Direct hit. No effect, a gunner said, his voice cracking. No hit it. All. They're dodging everything. Vera's fingers tightened around the rail before her. She had fought pirates, rebels, and warlords. She had commanded fleets against entire planetary defenses. Never had she seen a ship move like this. Never had she seen one so small, defy so much firepower. And still, the human captain had not fired again. It was as if they were waiting, watching, studying her, her eyes locked on the tiny vessel, and for the first time in years, a small sliver of unease slid into her chest. She opened the comms channel again. "Who are you?" she asked, the sharp edge in her voice hiding the unease beneath. The reply came at once, the same calm tone as before. "You'll know when we're done." Something in that voice made the temperature on the bridge feel colder. Vera gave the order for the entire fleet to surround the human ship, to leave no escape. In her mind, she told herself it was a matter of pride now. She would crush this insolence, tear apart that fragile craft, and make the humans a cautionary tale for the galaxy. But as the Imperial Armada closed in, the human vessel began to move again, drifting forward with deliberate slowness, as if daring them to come closer. The glow along its hull brightened once more, every eye on the bridge fixed on that light. Every heartbeat seemed louder in the silence. Just as Vera opened her mouth to give the final attack order, the human ship's weapons flared again, and the screen went white. The blinding white light faded slowly, like the dying flare of a collapsing star. And when the glare cleared, the scene before Admiral Vera was worse than any battlefield she had imagined. Entire sections of the Imperial fleet were gone. Damaged. Not crippled. Gone. The black emptiness of space yawned where proud warships had floated only moments before, their burning wreckage now scattering into the void. The destruction was clean, surgical, almost merciful in its precision. No ship was left half-broken. Each one struck had been split apart in a single perfect motion, as though some cosmic blade had passed through them without resistance. On the bridge of the Virexis, the silence was suffocating. Even the constant hum of machinery seemed to hold its breath. Vera's hands tightened into fists at her sides. "Report," she said, her voice low, not needing to be loud for the crew to hear the steel beneath it. The Hroth's Claw, Sereth Dawn, Iron Serpent, and Vorthen, pre-destroyed instantly. The tactical officer said, his eyes wide, his voice unsteady. The beam went through them like they weren't even there. We still have no reading on the weapons core. It's beyond anything in our records. Another officer turned from the sensors, his face pale. "Admiral." The weapon didn't stop after the fourth ship. It continued through to more before losing energy. That's 6 ships. In a single shot? The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Vera's gaze returned to the human vessel. It still sat there, small and still, the faint glow along, its hull fading away like the last breath of a predator between kills. They hadn't moved to escape. They hadn't retreated. They hadn't even spoken again. They simply watched. It was the kind of stillness that carried power, the stillness of something that knew it controlled the battlefield. A cold thought slid through her mind before she could push it away. This ship could destroy us all, and it knows it. Her jaw tightened. All forward units converge on target. Full spread. I want overlapping fire patterns. Nothing gets through without hitting them. The orders were carried out with mechanical precision, but she could hear the thin edge of fear. In her officers' voices, around the fleet, hundreds of weapon ports lit up, unleashing a storm of guided missiles, plasma bolts, and high-powered laser beams. The void became a river of fire, every trajectory arcing toward the tiny human craft at the center. But then, impossibility struck again. the human ship blurred. Not in the way a fast-moving object blurs to the eye, but as if space itself bent around it. Missiles twisted off course, spiraling harmlessly into the darkness. Laser beams bent, refracted, scattering like sunbeams through water. The ship didn't dodge like any fighter or corvette sight, it simply wasn't where the attacks landed. On the bridge, disbelief was turning into dread. "They're phasing," one officer whispered. "That's not possible." Vera silenced him with a glance, though inside she was thinking the same thing. Technology like this didn't exist. Not here. Not anywhere in known space. If humans possessed it. The balance of power in the galaxy had already shifted, and none of them had seen it coming. "Keep firing," she ordered, her voice sharp, the tone of a commander who refused to acknowledge defeat. They cannot hold that maneuver forever. But deep down, she knew the truth. Ships that survived on speed and stealth always made mistakes, eventually. This ship, this thing, was not moving with desperation. Every glide, every shimmer of displacement was exact, deliberate, almost lazy. They were not avoiding her weapons because they had tooth. They were doing it because they could. And because. They wanted her to see it. The cums crackled. Holt's voice came through again. Come low, but carrying across the bridge like a shadow creeping over the crew. 6 down. Hundreds to go. It wasn't a threat shouted enraged. It was a statement of fact. Vera's teeth clenched as she slammed her hand down on the console. Reroute all flanking squadrons. I want them boxed in, she barked. No. More games. The fleet shifted formation, a tightening ring of steel around the human vessel. They would cut off every escape vector. She would drown them in fire, overwhelm them with mass, and then the human ship moved. It wasn't a burst of speed nor an erratic dodge. It simply slid forward, slow and straight, into the very center of her tightening net. Vera felt the weight of the moment like a prey animal watching the predator walk. Willingly into the trap, only to realize too late that it was never the predator at all. Holt's voice came once more, soft enough that it almost felt personal. Do you want to see what one ship can really do? The glow along the human hull flared again, brighter than before, every marking lit as if molten light flowed beneath. Its skin, sensors screamed warnings, but this time the reading was different, stronger, more concentrated. The beam erupted, not as a straight line, but as a web of light branching out in multiple directions at once. The energy lances shot through the closest ships, piercing them in precise points engine cores, weapons arrays, bridge towers. Each strike was instant death, ships vanishing into clouds of fire and molten debris. In less than 30 seconds, 9 more Imperial warships were gone. The tactical officer's voice cracked. They're picking targets. They're only hitting the command ships. Vera understood the meaning immediately. They weren't here to wipe out the fleet entirely. They were here to cut off its head. And she was the biggest target of them all. The Varexis shook as a shockwave from a nearby explosion rattled its hull. Admiral Shields holding at 72%, voice called out, but it sounded more like a prayer than a report. Vera leaned forward, eyes narrowing, trying to study every motion of that impossibly agile craft. Fear was rising in the bridge crew like a tide, and if she lost them now, the battle would be over before it began. She forced her voice to remain steady, strong. Ready the main cannon. I don't care what it takes, lock onto that ship and prepare to fire. Around her, the crew moved to obey, but she could feel the hesitation in their movements. The doubt eating at them. The human ship slowed again, drifting almost lazily, as though taunting them. Holt's voice came over the cums one final time. In that moment, quiet but sharp enough to cut through the chaos. Your turn, Admiral. The bridge of the Varexis pulsed with red emergency lights as Admiral Vera's voice cut through the haze. Fire the main cannon, she barked, her tone leaving no space for hesitation. Her gunners moved with urgent precision, feeding the weapon's core with staggering amounts of energy. The flagship's spinal gun was a weapon built to crack open planetary shields. No corvette, no tiny vessel could withstand it. She told herself this over and over, forcing her mind to focus on that single truth. Yet the image of that human ship remained fixed in her vision's maw. motionless, daring her to try. The energy buildup hummed so deeply through the varixus that Vera felt it in her bones. Her tactical officer counted down. Main cannon. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The beam erupted from the flagship's prow like a spear of molten gold, tearing across the black void with unstoppable force. Every ship in the surrounding fleet paused its own fire to watch, knowing that nothing alive could survive such a strike. The shot reached the human vessel in under 2 seconds. And then reality bent. The ship didn't dodge not in any way Vera had seen before. Instead, it seemed to shimmer, its edges warping, as if space itself rippled around it. The cannon blast stretched, twisted, and then simply vanished into the distortion. No explosion, no debris, just gone. The bridge went silent, except for the faint hiss of cooling conduits. Vera gripped the rail tightly, her nails biting into the metal. "Where did the shot go?" she demanded. We don't know, Admiral," the weapons officer stammered. "It didn't hit." "Did it?" "Miss, it was redirected." The realization struck like a knife. This wasn't speed. This wasn't agility. This was something far worse. The human ship could ignore the laws of engagement entirely. The rules of distance, trajectory, reaction time, none of it mattered. Even the smallest ships were vulnerable to enough firepower. But this vessel wasn't playing by those rules. It wasn't avoiding her shots. It was erasing them from existence. Around the fleet, panic began to creep in. On open channels, Vera caught snippets of fear from captains she had known for decades. "Our weapons don't work. Can't track it. It's just gonna every time we fire." She silenced the chatter, locking all coms. To her direct control, if the crew saw her doubt, the entire Armada would collapse. "Form defensive sectors," she ordered. "Out. Don't let it pass the perimeter." The human vessel began to move again, gliding forward as if propelled by invisible currents. It didn't rush, didn't attack. It simply wove between Imperial warships, the slightest tilt of its hull enough to slide past their firing arcs. Ships tried to ram it, failed. Others tried to trap it with tractor beams. Those beams fizzled the moment they touched its hull. Every failed attempt only fed the unease, spreading like poison through Vera's fleet. Inside that alien bridge, her crew's voices were tense, their readings full of impossible data. The human craft was faster than their sensors could register. The targeting AI predicted its movement at a 0.002% accuracy rate, essentially useless. "It's untouchable," her science officer whispered. And the word stuck in her mind like a thorn. Untouchable. A ship that size should have been destroyed within the first minute. Instead, it was dismantling their confidence, piece by piece. Then came the voice against Commander Holt. Calm. Unhurried. "You still have most of your fleet, Admiral? I'm impressed. Most don't last this long." His tone wasn't mocking, not exactly. It was worse. It was pity, as though he were speaking to someone already defeated. Vera's lips curled back in defiance. "You think this is over?" She shot back. "You have one ship. I have hundreds." There was a pause, and then Holt replied, "Numbers are only a comfort. Until they vanish." The human ship veered suddenly toward a cluster of destroyers guarding the flank. They could adjust their formation. It released a burst of weapons fire, small, precise shots, each hitting exactly where it would do the most damage. Engines failed instantly. Shields collapsed without a single overload. Those destroyers didn't explode dramatically. They simply drifted dead in space, their crews powerless. It was cleaner than any strike Vera had ever seen, and that cold precision unsettled her more than the earlier destruction. One of her younger officers muttered under his breath, "It's like they know exactly where to hit." Vera turned sharply. "Explain," he swallowed. "Every shot, every single one is hitting a control nexus, a reactor choke, a stabilizer mount. That's not luck, Admiral. They've studied us." The implication was chilling. This wasn't just an advanced ship. was a hunter that had learned every weak point of the Imperial Navy before ever stepping onto the field. Vera's mind raced. If this kept up, she would lose the fleet without even realizing how fast it was happening. She needed a way to draw blood, to prove to her crew that this ship could be hurt. "Pull back all frigates," she commanded. "Bait it into the center. We'll collapse the formation on it and overload their spacefold systems." It was a gamble, but it was the only chance she had to trap something that refused to follow the rules of battle. The formation began to shift, ships peeling back to create an opening in the center of the Imperial ring. Predictably, the human vessel glided into it, drawn in by what must have looked like a weak point. Vera's hand hovered over the tactical console, waiting for the moment. "Now," she ordered. The circle closed like the jaws of a predator, dozens of ships locking their fire on the same point. The void lit up with overlapping beams and missiles. Each one aimed to block every possible escape route. But the human ship didn't run. It pulsed with that strange glow again, and the space around it seemed to fold inward like a collapsing wave. In an instant, it was no longer at the center of the formation. It was behind the Viraxis, so close that its hull filled the main viewer. Holt's voice came one last time in that moment, sharp and final. "Admiral, now we start." The sudden appearance of the human ship behind the Viraxis sent a shock through the bridge like a physical blow. Proximity alarms wailed, crew members spun in their chairs, and the tactical displays scrambled to adjust to the new reality. No one had seen it move. There had been no engine flare, no hyperspace jump, no distortion signature the sensors could track. One moment it was at the center of the fleet, the next it was staring straight down the spine of the Imperial flagship. Admiral Vera's hands gripped the railing so tightly her knuckles turned pale. "Evasive," she barked. The Viraxis lurched, thrusters firing, but it was too slow. The human vessel slid effortlessly around them.
Ow.
Its sleek hull brushing, close enough for the flagship's viewports to catch the gleam of alien stars reflected in its black armor. Then, the killing began. The human ship's weapons came alive not in a storm of uncontrolled fire, but in short, surgical bursts. Each shot was a scalpel, cutting deep and precisely. The first destroyer in their path took a single hit near its stern, right at the junction of engine housing and reactor core. Its engines died instantly, leaving it adrift, helpless, and spinning. The next strike was aimed at a cruiserite's shield generators, flickered once, and then went dark, leaving the massive vessel naked to the void. Another shot followed, tearing through its main bridge. No explosion, no flare of debris, just instant silence as every system went dark. The Viraxis's crew watched in disbelief. As the human ship moved through the fleet like a dancer weaving through an uncoordinated mob, it never fired blindly, never wasted a single shot. Every target it hit became useless in seconds. Ships that had survived decades of war crumbled under the precision of its assault.
Out.
Some captains broke ranks entirely, retreating in panic. Others tried to rush the intruder, hoping sheer numbers could overwhelm it. None succeeded. From the bridge, Vera tracked its every move. It was like watching a predator call a herd. No wasted motion, no unnecessary cruelty, only cold, efficient destruction. Her voice cracked with urgency. Cut it off. Get ahead of it. But the human vessel was always one step ahead. It curved through the battlefield with impossible grace, folding space in tiny bursts to slip between ships like water through fingers. In moments it was back in the open void, leaving a trail of disabled and shattered vessels behind. Then Holt's voice came again, low and measured, carried on an open channel so every ship in the fleet could hear. "We could end this quickly, but I want you to understand what you're fighting." His words cut through the cum's chatter, silencing even the most frantic voices. "You think you've seen war? You think numbers win battles? But you've never fought a death worlder. We don't waste shots, we don't miss, and we never run." The human ship surged forward, diving into the densest part of the fleet. The Viraxis' sensors struggled to keep up, tracking dozens of microfold jumps as it blinked in and out of firing arcs. Every time it reappeared, another ship died. Frigates, destroyers, cruisers' size didn't matter. All fell with equal ease. In the command pits, Vera's officers stared at their consoles, disbelief etched into their faces. "They're targeting command vessels," one officer whispered. "They're killing our coordination before they even think about our guns." Vera's jaw clenched. She knew the tactic cut off the head, and the body falls apart. She had used it herself in other wars, but never with such terrifying efficiency. The human ship spun sharply, its weapons flashing again, and a missile frigate exploded into a burning halo of debris. Before the fire could fade, the vessel folded space and emerged behind a heavy battle cruiser, punching two perfect holes through its armor. The cruiser's reactors destabilized, and the ship vanished in a blinding bloom of white-hot plasma. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, throwing smaller ships off course. The human craft rode the wave like it was nothing more than a gust of wind, gliding effortlessly through the chaos. Vera's voice was like steel when she spoke, even as dread twisted in her gut. "Lock every remaining weapon on that ship." The fleet obeyed, unleashing a desperate storm of plasma, missiles, and energy beams. But the human ship's movements became even more unpredictable. It seemed to anticipate every shot before it was fired, shifting in ways that made no tactical sense. Until the weapons passed harmlessly through empty space or struck one of their own ships caught in the crossfire, two Imperial destroyers were obliterated by friendly fire in under a minute. The bridge of the Veraxis grew tense with something worse than fear. It was realization. This wasn't just superior technology. This was mastery. The human ship wasn't reacting, it was leading them, pulling them exactly where it wanted them to be. And every time they tried to adapt, it punished them for it. The killing slowed. And for a moment, the vessel simply drifted again, its weapons cooling, its movement casual. Holt's voice came one last time in that pass, speaking only to Vera. "Now, you don't know the worst part yet. We haven't even started firing to kill you." She opened her mouth to reply, but her sensors officer shouted over her, "Admiral, they've locked onto us." Vera turned to the main viewer just in time to see the human ship's prow glowing once more, the light racing across its strange black hole. The Veraxis' shields flared to maximum, but even she didn't believe they would hold. The glow built higher, brighter, until the entire bridge was bathed in its glare. Holt's voice echoed in her ears, quiet, final, one shot. "Admiral, just for you." The glow around the human ship reached a blinding intensity, its strange black hole now traced with molten silver veins of energy. For a heartbeat, Admiral Vera thought the next moment would be her last, that the Veraxis would join the growing graveyard of her fleet, drifting in silence among the stars. But then, the light dimmed. The human vessel didn't fire. It simply moved away, sliding to a safe distance, like a predator, circling its prey, rather than delivering the final bite. The sudden retreat made her uneasy. It was not mercy. It was something else entirely. Inside the human ship, Commander Holt stood in a narrow control chamber, lit by a soft blue glow from dozens of holographic displays. The room was compact, efficient, not the sprawling ornamental bridges Vera's people favored. Every console here was angled toward function, not appearance. Behind him, an AI projection shimmered into form, a tall figure made of pure light, with eyes that burned like white fire. "Targets neutralized in sequence," the AI reported in a calm, almost gentle tone. "Primary threat remains the flagship." Holt nodded, his expression unreadable. "Not yet. I want them to see it first." The human ship was a thing built for death, not for intimidation, not for show, but for killing in the purest, its most efficient form. Every weapon was mounted where it could strike in any direction without delay. Every engine was tuned to respond instantly to the AI's calculations. The hull was layered with adaptive armor that shifted its density in response to threats, and beneath that armor ran the secret, the technology that made it untouchable. The ship didn't dodge in the normal sense. It didn't evade by speed alone. Instead, its spacefold drive allowed it to make microscopic jumps, fractions of a second and fractions of a meter. just enough to let every incoming shot pass harmlessly through where it no longer was. To the enemy, it was like trying to hit smoke with an arrow. Holt's AI, nicknamed Wraith, wasn't just a targeting system, it was a hunter. It calculated weak points in real time, analyzing every ship's position, angle, and armor structure. Every shot fired by the human vessel was guaranteed to strike a vulnerable spot. There was no wasted energy, no guesswork. And when Holt gave the order to kill, Wraith didn't miss. It never had. Back on the Virexis, Vera watched in cold silence. As her fleet reeled from the loss of another dozen ships, every surviving vessel had begun to shift away from the human ship, instinctively giving it distance. This wasn't strategy anymore. It was fear. She knew the signs. She'd seen fleets collapse before, though never her own. "They're hesitating," her first officer said softly, almost as if afraid to be heard. "They're losing their will to fight." Vera's eyes narrowed. "Then we will fight for them. Bring the flagship in close. If they see us standing, maybe they'll remember who they serve." The Virexis surged forward, its massive engines pushing the ship through the debris field. The human vessel drifted ahead, turning slightly as if acknowledging her challenge. And then, instead of fleeing, it moved toward her. The space between them closed quickly. Vera expected a rush of weapons fire, but instead the human ship slowed, again almost lazily, until the two vessels were facing each other across a gulf of empty space. The comms channel opened. Holt's voice filled the bridge. "Do you know why we build our ships so small, Admiral?" His tone was quiet, almost conversational. Vera's jaw clenched. She didn't answer, so he continued. "Because small is hard to hit. Because small can move where others can't. And because small forces us to make every shot count." His words were not boastful. They were simple truth. Your ships are monuments. Ours are tools. And tools are made to work, to kill, to win. Her officers shifted uneasily. The message wasn't just for her. It was for every ship in the fleet still listening. Holt's voice was eroding what little confidence they had left. "Enough talk," Vera snapped, cutting the comms feed. "Prepare all weapons. If that ship wants a duel, we'll give it one." Inside the human vessel, Holt's eyes flicked toward Wraith. "Target priority remains the flagship," the AI confirmed. "Recommend a disabling strike. Demonstration will break enemy morale." Holt allowed himself the faintest smile. "And let's show them." The human ship moved first. Its spacefold jumps became a blur, weaving between the Virexis' escort ships so quickly that even automated turrets failed to track it. When it emerged on the flagship's starboard side, its weapons flared in 3 sharp bursts. The first cut deep into the shield array, collapsing it instantly. The second struck a point just beneath the main cannon, severing the power conduits. The third was almost delicate. It struck a stabilizer fin along the starboard hull. The Virexis lurched violently, its massive frame shuddering as systems scrambled to keep it balanced. On Vera's bridge, alarms screamed in every direction. "Shields are gone," someone shouted. "Main cannon offline," another voice called. Sparks erupted from a side console, and the acrid scent of burning metal filled the air. Vera steadied herself against the railing, her eyes fixed on the human vessel now drifting calmly outside her viewport. It was toying with her, showing her it could have destroyed her at any moment. And choosing not to, the comms clicked on again, and Holt's voice came through, quieter this time, almost like a whisper meant for her alone. "You see, one shot, always enough." And then the channel cut. Around the battlefield, the effect was immediate. Ships began to scatter, their captains unwilling to die in what they now knew was a hopeless fight. Formation collapsed entirely. Vera could feel the battle slipping from her grasp, the weight of defeat pressing against her shoulders. But she wasn't ready to run. Not yet. "Bring us about," she ordered, her voice low but steady. "We end this on our terms." The battlefield was no longer a battle. It was a collapse. What had begun as a proud armada, hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation, had dissolved into a panicked scattering of isolated vessels, each fleeing in a different direction. The space between them was littered with drifting wreckage, burning reactors, and the cold remains of crews who had not been fast enough to escape the human ship's precision strikes. Admiral Ira stood at the center of the Viraxis's bridge, surrounded by the chaos of alarms, status readouts, and the tense, rapid voices of her surviving crew. Her jaw was tight, her claws digging into the railing so hard that the metal began to bend under her grip. She could smell the fear not just from her officers, but from herself. The human ship hovered at a distance, silent and still, as if content to watch them unravel. That quiet was worse than any attack. Every surviving captain in her fleet was calling in, their voices frantic. Some demanded orders to retreat. Others begged for permission to surrender. One transmission came in. Mid-sentence, before cutting off in statica, ship caught and destroyed in the middle of its plea. It was happening too fast for her to control. She was an admiral, but no command training had prepared her for a war against a single ship that fought like this. Admiral. Her first officer's voice was barely more than a whisper. If we don't withdraw now, there will be nothing left. She didn't answer. Her mind replayed the last moments of the flagship's encounter with the human vessel, the 3 shots. The precision, the way it had disabled her without even trying to finish her, that wasn't mercy. That was humiliation. Holt wanted her alive long enough to see him win. He wanted her to carry the memory of this defeat back to her people, to spread the story of what one human ship had done. And that thought was unbearable. "Prepare the engines," she said suddenly. The crew hesitated. "For retreat?" Her first officer asked hopefully. "No," she growled. "For impact." The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned toward her in shock. She continued without looking at them. "Our weapons cannot touch it. Our shields are gone. Our fleet is gone. But mass," her eyes narrowed. "Mass can still crush anything if you put enough force behind it." The Viraxis's engines roared to life, the massive thrusters, pushing the flagship forward with a power that shook the decks. The course was set directly toward the human vessel. No evasive patterns, no diversions. Just a straight, full-speed collision. Across the void, Holt watched the move unfold. His eyes narrowed as Wraith instantly detected the new vector. "Admiral Vera is attempting a ramming maneuver," the AI confirmed, its voice still calm. "Projected impact in 41 seconds. Holt didn't flinch. "Options?" he asked. "Evasion probability, 100%, Wraith answered without hesitation. "But if you evade now, the flagship will survive and may rally remaining forces." Holt considered that for a moment, then shook his head. "No, let her come." Closer, the human vessel held its position. Vera saw that and felt a flicker of satisfaction. Perhaps the human commander thought she was bluffing. Perhaps he underestimated just how far she was willing to go. She leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes locked on the tiny black shape ahead. The Virax's speed climbed higher, the ship vibrating under the strain. 30 seconds. To impact, her helmsman reported. On Holt's bridge, Wraith adjusted firing sequences, plotting dozens of possible responses. "You could end this now," the AI said. "A single shot to the reactor core." Holt's voice was quiet, almost distant. "Not yet. She wants to test us. Let's give her an answer she'll never forget." The distance between the two ships closed rapidly. Stars streaked past as the Viraxis reached its maximum velocity. The strain was so great that panels shook loose from the ceiling and fell to the deck. Still, no one dared slow down. They were committed. 15 seconds, the helmsman called out, his voice tight with both fear and adrenaline. Vera's eyes never left the human vessel. In her mind, she could already feel the shudder of the impact, hear the tearing of its fragile hull. She would die in the collision of that, she had no doubt, but she would take him with her. And in that final moment, her people would see that she had not gone quietly into defeat. But as the counter dropped to 10 seconds, the human ship finally moved. It didn't dodge in the traditional way. It didn't turn or roll. It simply blurred. Out of existence for a heartbeat, reappearing a fraction of a kilometer to the side. The Viraxis roared past the empty space where it had been. unable to stop or change course. Then, before her crew could even react, the human ship appeared alongside, her matching her speed perfectly. Holt's voice came through the comms again, this time only for her. "You think speed is power? You think size is strength? You're wrong." His voice was calm, almost pitying. "Power is control, strength is precision, and you have neither." That same instant, Wraith fired. One perfectly placed blast tore through the Varexis's primary engine housing. The flagship shuddered violently as the explosion ripped through its aft section, sending it tumbling off course. The collision course was gone. So was any chance of winning. Vera slammed into the railing as the deck pitched beneath her. The lights flickered, then dimmed. Emergency systems struggled to hold the ship together, but she knew it was over. Outside, the human vessel slowed again, drifting back to watch the crippled flagship spin helplessly. Holt's eyes were cold. He had broken her fleet. Now he had broken her will. And yet, as the Varexis stabilized on emergency power, Vera's gaze lifted toward the viewport. The human ship remained there, motionless, like a shadow that could strike again at any second. She knew the next move would decide not just her fate, but the story the galaxy would remember. The Varexis drifted in space, wounded and burning. Its engines sputtered, spilling trails of plasma into the void. The once proud flagship, the symbol of the Zrithian fleet's dominance, now looked like a carcass floating in the shadow of its predator. On the bridge, Admiral Vera clung to the railing, her breathing slow but steady. The humiliation was a weight on her shoulders, but deep inside, a small ember of defiance still burned. Holt's ship. The Wraith hovered just out of reach, like a predator savoring its victory. No more shots were fired. No more taunts came through. The comes. The silence was deliberate and unspoken message that he controlled the pace. That she existed now only because he allowed it. Her crew sat in tense stillness, waiting for the next strike. Some kept their eyes on their consoles, pretending to focus on damage control. Others stared at the viewport, unable to look away from the tiny black ship that had destroyed them. Every one of them could feel the same truth creeping in. This wasn't just a battle they had lost. This was the death of their fleet's reputation. Vera closed her eyes for a moment and listened. Beneath the hum of the failing systems, she could hear something else, the quiet, panicked rhythm of her crew's breathing. They were warriors, trained to fight to the last breath. But right now, they were prey. Or prey only survived if the predator got distracted. Her eyes opened. "Get me tactical control," she ordered. The officers hesitated. "Admiral, our weapons are gone. Do it," she snapped. One by one, the remaining control systems transferred to her chair. Most were barely functioning. Shields were gone, main cannons destroyed. But secondary launch bays? Yes, they still had those. She checked their inventory. Only 4 long-range torpedoes remained. Not nearly enough to kill the Wraith, unless she didn't aim for it directly. She leaned toward her helmsman. Course calculation, nearest debris fields from destroyed ships, with remaining unstable reactors. The helmsman's eyes widened as he understood. The battlefield around them was littered with the corpses of ships Holt had already destroyed. Some of those ships still carried reactor cores that hadn't fully detonated. If a chain reaction could be triggered, the blast might be big enough to overwhelm even the human's speed and precision. It was a desperate gamble. It was also her only chance. On the Wraith, Holt's sensors tracked every movement of the Varexis. He saw the small changes in position, the subtle shifting of her angle. "She's not running," he murmured. "Correct," Wraith's AI replied. "She is aligning with debris patterns. Possible strike vector toward unstable reactors in the vicinity. Estimated probability, 68%. Holt's lips curved slightly. She's still dangerous. The human commander considered his options. He could end her now, one shot to the bridge and it would be over. But part of him wanted to see what she would try. After all, you didn't truly know your enemy until you saw their final move. Vera locked in her course and armed the torpedoes. Her fingers moved over the controls with calm precision, even as her heart pounded. She remembered the first time. She had heard of humans, a primitive race from the edge of the galaxy, mocked by most advanced civilizations. She had laughed at the stories of their courage and stubbornness, dismissing them as legend. But now, after seeing Holt's ship dismantle her entire armada, she realized those stories had been true and far too generous. Humans weren't stubborn, they were relentless. The targeting reticle blinked red. The unstable reactors from 3 destroyed warships were aligned in a perfect arc. If her torpedoes struck them in the right sequence, the resulting explosion would cover a blast radius far larger than the Wraith's maneuvering space. She took a deep breath. Fire! The torpedoes streaked away from the Virexis, leaving trails of light in the darkness. Alts! Sensors picked them up instantly. The AI's voice came sharp and urgent. Torpedoes inbound trajectory not toward Wraith, but toward debris clusters. Chain reaction, highly probable. For the first time since the battle began, Holt felt a flicker of surprise. Vera wasn't trying to hit him. She was trying to reshape the battlefield itself. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. The Wraith blurred into motion, slipping between wrecks and burning hulks, trying to break line of sight before the first detonation. But the torpedoes found their marks. The first reactor went up in a blinding flash, sending a shockwave across the field. The second explosion followed half a heartbeat later, then the third. For a moment, the void was pure chaos, spinning wreckage, expanding fireballs, energy waves rippling in every direction. Era gripped her chair as the Virexis was hurled sideways by the force. Her crew held on desperately, alarms screaming around them, and then, through the haze of fire and debris, she saw it. The Wraith knocked off its perfect, precise course for the first time. Her heart surged, all power to remaining. Thrusters! Get us behind the nearest debris cluster. If they could break line of sight and slip into the shadows, there was a chance, just a chance, that Holt would lose track of them in the chaos. But as the Virexis moved, Holt's voice came through the coms again, calm and cold. It's not bad. Admiral, you almost made me work for it. Her blood ran cold. The voice wasn't coming from her coms array. It was coming from inside her ship. She turned slowly toward the shadows at the back of the bridge. Saw him. Holt was standing there. The bridge of the Virexis froze. No one moved. No one even breathed. Holt stood near the rear bulkhead, dressed in a dark flight suit, his helmet hanging loosely in one hand. His presence was calm, almost casual, like a man who had simply walked into a room where he already owned everything inside. The glow from the burning wrecks outside painted his face in shifting shades of red and gold. Vera rose slowly from her command chair, every muscle tight. How? She demanded, her voice low but sharp. Holt tilted his head slightly, as though amused she had to ask. Your shields were down. Your hull was torn apart. You didn't think I'd knock first, did you? Around them, her crew looked back and forth, unsure if they should draw weapons. Holt didn't seem to notice. Or maybe didn't care. He took a few steps forward, his boots echoing against the deck. You tried something clever out there? He said, nodding toward the viewport, where the fires still burned in the distance. Almost worked. You even made me change course. His eyes locked with hers. That hasn't happened in a very long time. Vera forced herself to keep her gaze steady. You destroyed my fleet. My people will never forget this. Forget faster than you think, Holt replied evenly. Because after tonight they won't want to remember. Her jaw tightened. Is this what humans are? Predators hiding behind technology? He smiled faintly. Technology helps. No. This is just what happens when someone threatens our home. The words were simple. But there was something behind them, a weight that made her understand this wasn't about conquest or territory. It was personal. Every move he had made tonight was meant to send a message. She stepped closer. And what message is that? Holt stopped walking, only a few meters from her now. The dim emergency lights reflected in his eyes. That humans don't start wars, but we finish them. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Somewhere, deep in the ship, a damaged reactor groaned. Finally, Vera drew in a sharp breath. If you're here to kill me, then do it. Holt studied her for a long moment, as if weighing the idea, and slowly he shook his head. No. Confusion flickered in her eyes. Why not? 'Cause dead enemies can't spread fear, Holt said quietly. But survivors tell the story. Her chest rose and fell faster now. She understood exactly what he meant. He turned slightly, addressing her entire bridge crew without raising his voice. You all saw what happened here. I'll know what one human ship can do. Remember it. Share it. Let it haunt you every time. You see our flag? Every word felt like it was carving itself into the walls. Vera clenched her fists. And if I come after you again? Holt's eyes narrowed just enough for her to see the steel in them. Then I won't stop at your fleet. Threat hung in the air like a blade. Without another word, Holt tapped something on the device strapped to his wrist. A faint shimmer surrounded him, and then his form began to distort, like smoke pulled apart by wind. In seconds, he was gone. The bridge was silent, save for the faint hum of dying systems. No alarms, no gunfire. Just the oppressive weight of what had just happened. Vera sank back into her chair, her eyes fixed on the burning void outside. Her crew waited for orders, but none came. She knew she had survived only because Holt had decided it. That thought cut deeper than any wound. Somewhere, far off, the Wraith reappeared on sensor small. Distant and moving away at a steady pace. It didn't even look back. Vera exhaled slowly. Prepare the ship for return to Zrithia, she said at last, her voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it. And make sure every record of this battle is transmitted to command. As her officers moved to obey, she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and whispered to herself, They'll never believe me until it's too late. Far ahead, the Wraith slipped into the shadows between the stars, vanishing like a ghost. But the story of what had happened would not vanish. It would grow, whispered in war rooms and council halls, till it became something more than a battle report, till it became a warning. And somewhere in the darkness, Holt allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Another fleet broken, another lesson delivered, and, just as he had planned, another survivor to tell the tale.